Hello and welcome to the Scouting Baseball Podcast here with Taylor Blake Ward. That's me and my co-host here, Jeff Ellis. Jeff, how are you doing on this lovely Friday afternoon?
I'm doing okay. We're soon we will be the next draft up after Saturday.
No kidding. The NFL draft kicked off last night. Obviously, Myles Garrett to the Browns. Jeff, you Cleveland guy. Do you like that pick?
Yeah, that's. I'll be honest. I wasn't sold on the quarterbacks, so I'd rather just take the monster athlete.
I agree. My Packers decided they didn't want to hang out in the first round, so no big. I will say this: my NFL mock draft that I did about an hour before the draft, did all the study. I'm not a football guy by that standard, and I got 7 picks out of the first 32, so I'll take that.
That's not bad at all. I don't know how I did. I should go look at mine, but I think I saw on Twitter today the best anyone did was 9. So I think you're a pretty solid company there.
I'll take what I can get. I was pretty happy. But we are talking baseball, and in particular the Major League Baseball draft coming up in June. We're only 46 days away, I believe is what we did the math finally. Jeff, I saw you scouting your students there at school. Same
yes, ceiling floor comps on my students.
Is it like a 50 math grade, or how do you assess your kids there?
Just talk about the overall growth and ceiling potential of where they are. Just talking to another teacher about a student who is struggling. So I talked about, but he's got a high ceiling. You can see what he can do. We just have to get him there. So it was in a positive light.
He's a first round pick in my eyes. Well, speaking of first round picks, there's going to be quite a few in the prep ranks in California. That's going to be my next piece, is going to be the top 20 California prep players. And one in particular is really bringing a lot of attention in Hunter Greene. Jeff, I'm here in California, so I hear a little bit more noise. What's the sound around the nation going on with Hunter Greene?
He's risen to the top of all boards. I was holding on to my guy, Beto, because I don't like to change. I always feel somehow like my biggest mistakes I've learned have been being too rash to jump, especially after just a few weeks of data. But Hunter Greene seems to be something truly special. I was thinking about the other day, and it reminds me to a degree of, if you remember the old Brian Taylor story with the Yankees, where it was just that exceptional athlete of a pitcher who was, just a phenomenal arm talent. I didn't, when I first thought about that, I'm like, oh no, now I'm just comparing 2 pitchers of color. But, I think at this point, Greene has put himself, we kind of have Greene and McKay at the top. Greene's put himself just, I think, above McKay with that ceiling, even though McKay clearly has that high floor.
And out here, it's all the talk. He's on the cover of Sports Illustrated now, talking about generational talent, and that's what every scout out here sees. It's the question of if he will go number 1 or if he'll fall just a few picks. Obviously, I've had Hunter as the top talent in this draft since probably the last draft ended, at least, and even before that, I saw Blake Rutherford take him deep, but that was about all I could say about him that was a negative. But the big news is that he is shut down for pitching. His father sent a text to scouts saying that the coaching staff there at Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, the LA region, decided to shut him down as a pitcher. And a lot of people are questioning if this is going to be something that puts him lower in the draft, something that he possibly wants to stay closer to home in San Diego at that number 3 pick. It sounds like he does not want to go to the Reds because of developmental concerns, just based on the Reds' track record. But obviously, has a chance to be the first ever right-handed pitcher out of the high school ranks to go number 1 overall. Jeff, we've talked about this before, the Reds' development. It's funny. We look at the Twins development staff, and I've always been very low on the Twins development staff, and I've always felt that Hunter I was kind of hoping for Hunter's sake that he wouldn't go to the Twins. I think it's a great organization, just not the greatest at developing players. The Padres, obviously, it would be great for him. He gets to stay home. It's a great staff. It's a great organization. A.J. Preller would love to give Hunter Green all that he has to offer. But when it comes to the Reds, Jeff, you've brought up concerns before based on their developmental staff and how they develop their pitchers.
Well, they've been interesting with their pitchers. There was a period where they were looking, just taking relievers and converting them to starters. And they're taking often some undersized guys that are looking at velocity and ignoring, the kind of the pitchability factors. And they've had some interesting guys in there, but 2-3 years ago, I always kind of dust out this piece where I just basically took and added up the WAR value of every team's draft year period. And this is like, I think I did like 91 to 2011. And the worst team in baseball were the Reds. And it hasn't really gotten better over the past few years. And you wonder, is it developing talent? Is it who they're drafting? But it's, Tyler Stevenson is kind of a recent guy. I mean, Nick Senzel lit the world on fire last year. But he's kind of more the exception and not the rule. So, and that's, part of their problem. And they had, just a few years ago, some pretty strong teams, and they just could not bring up the young players to help keep that core going. And I mean, right now, like I said, that was a few years ago. Now one can make the case that I'd have to stretch back a little further, but you're going to be able to say that the Reds have maybe been the worst drafting and developing team for the last 30 years in baseball.
And that's a scary thought. This is a great question that came up on Twitter to both of us here, and it's involving someone that may go to the Reds, and Brendan McKay, arguably the top college talent. I mean, it's almost unarguable at this point, pitching-wise, hitting-wise. He could go as a number 1 overall pick as a first baseman or as a left-handed pitcher. The question here, and it does involve Hunter Green. This is from Dylan Brunnen-Kant, and I apologize, Dylan, if I'm saying that wrong, at DCant73. Is there any chance Hunter Green or Brendan McKay pitch and play in the field? I'm wondering if this is mentioning at the pro level. You start this. Maybe you can touch on Brendan because he's a little closer to you, and I can touch on Hunter a little bit.
I would say 0.0% chance. These guys are high picks, and they're going to pay them a lot of money, and they don't want to add any extra risk. The last guy I can think who really got a chance to play in the field was Carson Kelly, the pitcher who was with the Red Sox, who then was traded to the Padres. And I haven't paid attention, but I don't think he's really done a whole lot. He was a big team prospect, and part of the only reason Boston was able to sign him is because they agreed to such a deal. He more wanted to be a hitter and a pitcher, but he's a better pitcher. I mean, I think you see situations like that, but I think these guys at the top, they're gonna, especially with McKay. I appreciate the bat, but there's a lot more value in a left-handed starter than a first baseman with good on-base skills and average power.
I think of interesting note is if Brendan McKay does go to a National League team, I do wonder that on his developmental path, if they will put him in the lineup regularly as a DH possibly to keep that bat alive, only if he goes to a National League team just to keep his bat going. Obviously, a special talent as a hitter. Maybe doesn't have the power, even though he just hit 4 home runs the other day. I think he has 12 on the season, 11 on the season. So, I mean, it's not that it's not there. It's just you have a guy that can hit at that level, but his pitching is likely what's going to carry him. As for Hunter Green, I've heard this rumor. I'm not really buying into it, but the rumor is that whoever drafts him will send him out as a shortstop over the course of the rest of the summer and not have him pitch, and then have him pitch through the rest of his development. I definitely am not going to really bite into that just yet until I see it.
There is some logic to it. I'll agree with that. I mean, we'll see. There is a logic.
It's not the craziest thing, but it's also maybe not the most interesting thing to put him in the field that way. A lot of people are saying he's a possible 50-grade position player, basically mostly because of his defensive skills at shortstop. But the bat, just a few too many questions. The power is there, but is the contact ability there? There's a 99.9% chance that he's going to go as a pitcher regardless. So a great question.
Higher chance that McKay goes as a hitter. The McKay rumors aren't going away. But,
no, I've heard 60-40 pitcher hitter, but you just really don't know. I think it was a great question by Dylan. I do appreciate the question. As you're listening in, feel free to throw some in. We're still talking California prep players. That's going to be my next piece. There's quite a few that are bringing up. They're catching a little bit of helium. Obviously, Nick Pratto, the power surge he showed at the beginning of the year was enough to put him there. A lot of people are talking about Adrian Gonzalez comps out of Huntington Beach High School, but his teammate is really drawing a lot of helium right now. Hagen Danner, a catcher and right-handed pitcher who's been low to mid-90s, regularly showing improvement on his off-speed. And we have a question here from Les Lukacs, who's fantastic California prep coverage from Les. We actually, I've talked to him about having him on the podcast. We're going to keep that in play, but he's asking, is Hagen Danner a pitcher or a catcher? Jeff, once again, I'll let you lead this off.
Yeah, again, this is me sticking my guns. His stuff is playing up now. It is, which makes my evaluation not as strong as it would be. But I still think that I would put him out at catcher, just because I am the king of saying height doesn't matter, but I can also realize that it is a variable. And him being 6'1", there is a greater window of success with that height at catcher than at pitcher. And I think he can be an average power, average hit tool, and a plus defender, which is a top 10 catcher in baseball. And to me, I think that's just where he's got more, I guess, ceiling. I think his ceiling is higher at catcher just in terms of overall value than what he can bring, because I don't think he's more than maybe a 4 as a starter. So I stick with my assessment there. I do think he has a better chance, and I understand why someone goes with pitcher. But for me, I would still lean catcher.
I think what's interesting is he's showing so much more athleticism as of recently. Behind the plate, obviously there's concern a little bit if he can stick at catcher just because of the long haul. I think he's a fantastic catcher. And that's my personal opinion. Scouts are a little heavy here trying to figure out what they feel about him. As for the bat, it's a fairly good swing, gets long at times, but there's power there. But for me, it's all about the pitcher. What he did at the Boris Classic last week, flashing that 94-95 that he has, really hasn't had to go to his changeup a whole lot in the prep ranks, but has a good changeup. The curve is really showing, and he's throwing a lot of strikes. Like you said, Jeff, maybe just a 4 or a 5 in a rotation, but at the same time, there's a little bit more upside to me. I would go pitcher. So, Les, I hate to tell you, it's a 50-50 split here as well. More on the California prep ranks, there's a few names, like we said, that are catching helium. One caught me off guard because I have not seen him yet, so I can't really say a whole lot. Is Michael Mercado out of the San Diego region. A lot of people are talking Tristan Beck with Mercado. It's really intriguing. Hans Kraus, obviously, at the National High School Invitational, really strong outing. It's more of, I think the most interesting thing is the battle of the Mitchells. Calvin Mitchell out of San Diego region, Rancho Bernardo High School, and Garrett Mitchell in Orange County, the Orange Lutheran High School. Calvin has really stepped up his bat as of recent, really showing that he can hit. It's just a little bit of a wonder if he's going to be able to play the outfield regularly. He would be a left fielder if so. As for Garrett, he's monster-sized. He's a linebacker, halfback sized for maybe even the college ranks. Supreme athlete, but is dealing with type 1 diabetes, and he's also just not hitting a game. Very toolsy across the board, but just really not showing it in game, which is really interesting. Jeff, I know you don't get out to California much. I've seen these guys firsthand often. Is there anyone in California that's really rising on your boards?
Um, sorry about that. When I look at the, sorry, I'm hearing my own voice right now.
Oh, I'll have to turn my audio down a little.
Okay, there we go. Just going back to the Mitchells, I think, as you mentioned, it's Nick Mitchell can hit, but is there enough power and what's the position? And, Garrett's all tooled up, but, there are so many outfielders in this draft that I feel like you can say, oh, they're tooled up to the extreme, but can they hit? I mean, when I went through and wrote out my top 50 prospects, it felt like I was talking about if it was one guy, it was half a dozen. There's a lot of stuff, all these positives. They can run, there's power, can they hit? And you can go back to Joe Adele, if you think it's just, one of the bigger names in this draft, or that's the question. In terms of risers, it's been, to toot my own horn, it's been nice to kind of see people coming around on Blaine Knight and Jake Berger. I think we're seeing Berger really push up boards. I think at this point there's a chance he could end up as high as 11, especially with a few other guys who are struggling at the top who might slip down boards, and especially just because the depth of the pitching class could cause some of those guys who are struggling to slide a bit as well. But from that perspective, those are the guys who have kind of been exciting to see their rise. Unfortunately, like the only guy I've seen in person who has like top 30 talk is Tanner Houck, and I saw him against University of Kentucky. I mean, I guess Evan White as well has some talk there, but the game I saw him, I think the highest I had Houck at was 94. He wasn't sharp. He was basically throwing 2 pitches the whole game. I mean, he had 7 strikeouts and his defense had some issues, but I was going down there expecting to kind of see a top 10 guy, and it wasn't there. Evan White was an easy athlete. He hit some balls hard. You could see that in spite of what his numbers look like, he does have a decent eye for the zone. He wasn't swinging at bad pitches. He was working counts. Made some plays that made you think, well, maybe there's a chance he could be a left fielder, right fielder, or if he stays at first, he's going to be a plus, like 65 grade, maybe 70 grade first baseman. I mean, he was smooth there. He looked really good. But I'll stand by at this point. The best prospect I've seen this entire year is Tristan Pompey, the right fielder for Kentucky, and he's not eligible.
Dalton's little. Yeah, Dalton's little brother. I actually just talked to the Toronto scout who signed Dalton and was a part of bringing Dalton within the organization. And I brought him up. He says, I didn't even know he had a brother. And so now, these guys are kind of searching. Jeff, there's a few names that talking already in the first round, possibly even top 10 picks. One of them is probably a guy that really intrigues you strictly because of the school he goes to. And I definitely agree with this. Adam Hazley at the University of Virginia. We actually got into a nice little spat with one of our followers or something about the University of Virginia. I've got to say it's probably one of the greatest schools in the nation when it comes to just talent and finding ways to win. It's one of the best programs without a doubt. But when it comes to pro ball, there hasn't been a lot of success out of Virginia. Maybe Ryan Zimmerman is, I believe, the top WAR leader, wins above average leader for them. He's on a little bit of a tear, but never really blossomed into what everyone thought he'd become. Adam Hazley and Pavin Smith are there, but Adam Hazley really jumping up boards. Jeff, what's your take? And is the University of Virginia, maybe this is the turnaround for them?
Just to go into this, because I've taken a lot of heat from Virginia guys, because a few years ago I was like really talking up Virginia, and then there was about a 6-year stretch where I covered the Indians, they're kind of the local team, where they drafted someone from Virginia fairly high every year, and every single one of those players fell flat on their face. I still have people who talk about Mike Pappy. I've seen a lot of Mike Pappy, and he's a passable guy, but when you talk to like people who are down there watching, you talk to people that are around it, I don't see a future major leaguer. He was a first round pick, and he's not alone. We're seeing a lot of these guys for whatever reason. If you want, I'm probably going to forget someone, but the top 3 bats in the major leagues in terms of WAR, in the history of University of Virginia is Brian Zimmer, Mark Reynolds, and Brandon Geyer. Their number one pitcher all time is left-handed relief specialist Javier Lopez. And then they had a pitcher in the 70s or 80s who had a decent run. Or no, yeah, a decent run, because then Sean Doolittle's been a bit up and down with injuries. So that's my concern. And, we've seen a lot of guys, Connor Glass a year ago, Nate Kirby, Holtzen, Danny Holtzen, who we've seen these guys all kind of have these big variants. People have pointed out that, hey, Vanderbilt's really failed to do and develop any hitters, and that's true as well. And that's something to look at when we look at Jaron Kendall. Why are these Vandy guys playing well now, but they've had a lot of high picks, but their bats haven't shown much. So, Hazley's putting up strong numbers. He's a two-way guy, so you're hoping for growth. Can he stay in center field, or is he going to have to move? There's all the questions. And, no doubt he's having a fantastic year. And, you look at his numbers, you look at Pavin Smith, and, I talk about Ernie Clement a lot, who's a middle infielder for them. Those guys never strike out. I think they each have struck out like 6 or less times this year. So there's something to the approach. And I don't know if that approach works well in college and then maybe doesn't work as well when you move up to the ranks of the minors. In the minors and are facing better pitchers who maybe can get away with a bit more. It seems silly to make that statement that, they don't strike out enough, but I don't know what the approach is. Guys would be much, much higher if I didn't have my concerns about the program. My biggest negative for Hazley and Smith is where they play. And is that fair? No, but there's just enough there for me to be like, I can't trust this program until I see success come from it at this point. And it's a great program. They win a bunch of games. It's a fantastic college, but something's been rotten in the state of Virginia, to steal a line from Macbeth. And I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe, this is the best draft they've had in a while in terms of talent. Hazley and Smith are probably both going to be top 10 picks. So hopefully this is the turnaround point.
There's an interesting, it's a small sample size, but Matt Theis went to the Angels last year. He was a guy that rarely ever struck out. This year, he's striking out at a 14% rate, 11% on his minor league career, but he's also walking the same extent. So you are seeing them hit the pro level, and they're still keeping their strikeout ratio fairly low, which is very interesting. I think Matt Theis is a great example for a guy like Pavin Smith, who similar players in a sense. Matt a little more athletic, but it's interesting to kind of contrast that. Before we get into the negatives, we're going to kind of start with a negative and go to a positive. The shortstop class for this year didn't come in incredibly strong, nothing like in past years. Guys like Brady McConnell have kind of fallen off. Kevin Smith at Maryland have fallen off a little bit. They're obviously first-day talents. It's not that it's just they went from first round to possibly second round. But there are two guys who really jumped up in the shortstop ranks. One is Nick Allen, a small guy from out here. Jeff, another guy that we got into a little bit of a Twitter debate about. It started with J.B. Bukowskis, and it turned into Nick Allen. Jeff, I'm much higher than you are on Nick, strictly because of how I've seen his bat and how I've seen him in the field. From someone that's hearing about him from other sources, how do you feel about Nick Allen?
There's a really good shortstop at Louisville. I think it's Hairston. I think it's Devin Hairston. And he's a high performer. And let's see if I can pull up his numbers this year. But I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he was telling me a story about he was talking to a scout about, well, what do you think about this kid? And this guy, he sees a lot of Louisville games, and he's like, it's great, but when was the last time you ever saw someone that size in the big league? Like teams just don't have a lot of expectations for success with players like that. And we can say David Eckstein, but it is, it's hard to find the success. And like I said, again, I'm the king of, don't get obsessed with hype. When we look at these guys who are like 5'7", 5'8", and next year will be really interesting because Nick Madrigal at Oregon State right now is doing some pretty ridiculous things for them. If you have a chance, go look up Madrigal. He's probably the number one offensive shortstop in the country right now. And he is Nick Allen sized. The thing, with Allen is you're going to go up there and realize he's never going to hit for any power at all. You're going to have to, you're hoping for an average bat. I've heard possibly 55, 60 grade hit tool. I'm not as bullish. Those Zep Labs data for his bat speed compared to others was not as quick. What Allen reminds me a little bit of is Tony Wolters, who used to play with the Indians, and they moved him from shortstop to catcher leagues, and he's been a solid backup. And Wolters was a California kid, I think. About the same size, not as good of a defender. That's going to be the big difference. Allen is 60, 65 defender, most likely at shortstop, and that's what's going to pull him through. But I just keep seeing Tony Wolters when I look at him with plus defense, which, that's a potential league average starter. But it just, another one might be a poor man's Andrelton Simmons for me. There's value there. I just don't know how much value in
him. And the word out here, I actually had a scout tell me he reminds him of Placido Polanco, who was a second baseman, but as a hitter, Placido Polanco kind of guy, a 6-hit tool, possibly a guy that can just find a way to make a career. Another comp was if Tony Campana was playing in the infield and could hit better. It was more regarding speed and body type in that manner. But definitely Nick Allen, a very intriguing guy. If he was 2-3 inches taller, even just under 6 foot, we might be talking about a much different player. Another shortstop that's kind of rising on a lot of boards, and we just had our mock draft put him at 19 and felt we had a really good fit there with the Giants, is Logan Warmoth, shortstop out of North Carolina, the University of North Carolina. Jeff, I was always a little bit high on him, felt that he could stick at shortstop, felt that he could hit all the way up to the major league level. Maybe he's not a special breed player. Maybe he's just an up-the-middle guy, but what's your take on Logan Warmoth?
It's been fun to see because, he started the year behind other, Kevin Smith is a great athlete at Maryland, but he's never really hit. He's never, when you have the tools, you want to see that guy kind of go out there. And I would argue he's not even the best prospect on his team this year. It's Brian Schaefer, the pitcher. I'm trying to think who the other college shortstop was who was really high on the list at the start of the year, and it's bad that I'm blanking, but I'm blanking because
there's Taylor Walden, Clay Fisher. Clay obviously
Fisher got hurt. There was someone else.
Taylor Walden.
Yeah, there was one more guy, but the thing it comes down to is Warmoth is always hit. There's some debate. Maybe he'll have to move to second base. Is he going to stick it short? But this guy, and I'm happy to see him rising up boards. I got some feedback from our mock. It's always nice to hear from people. And feedback on that pick was the Giants like Warmoth, period. A lot, period. So we'll have to see. It's interesting. But I thought that was fun.
Really interesting. Someone, you follow other draft writers and they become friends of yours. And I don't remember if it was Callis or Mayo for MLB that got the question of if Warmoth would be a target at 19. And I felt like it caught them off guard. And they said, yeah, that would be sensible. This was on Twitter. They put it out there in one of those mailbags. Really interesting to see. That was a little after our mock draft. So who knows? Maybe we started something. That was strictly more on draft strategy when we were talking about that, as opposed to actual information that we have received from any Giant scout. Obviously, a lot of people just want to know who their teams are targeting. We don't know. I mean, for the most part, we don't know. A lot of people are saying, is our team gonna address this? Is our team gonna address this? They're just figuring that out right now. We're still in April. May is going to be a really fun month for us doing the draft coverage, trying to figure out who's going where, what's going on. And one thing that's really interesting, and this is a question from Devin Mackey, Derv Mackey, and I'm sorry if I'm doing that wrong, at Derv Mackey, is the guys that maybe aren't going to go on that first day strictly because they're in their fourth year of college ball. The question is, who are the best senior sign candidates this year? Jeff, obviously, the standout is Brent Rooker down there at Mississippi State. Another great program. Love Brent Rooker just overall, but kind of one of those guys that doesn't really have a set position. He's just a tall guy. He's going to be able to hit for some power. He's showing a ton of power. That's the obvious take. Jeff, you brought up a few names that you've seen that you like that are seniors. There's a couple guys that I like. What's your take on the senior class this year?
Even with someone like Rooker, it's kind of hard because technically he's a redshirt junior, so he does have a little bit more. But once you see those guys kind of at age 22, we just kind of consider them seniors to a degree. Will Crow is a guy who's in that exact same situation as a redshirt junior. Just some of those names to know. Just locally, people I've actually seen. Last Saturday, I was at Kent versus Toledo. Toledo is not a strong baseball program, and I don't mean that as an insult. The MAC is losing Buffalo this year, and they lost Akron 2 years ago. I want all these programs to stay strong because it's sad to see this division shrinking. But Toledo did have a player get drafted last year, the shortstop, a good defender. His name's escaping me. But the reason I bring this up is there was probably as many scouts there as when I was down seeing Missouri versus Kentucky, which is a game loaded. I mean, there's probably going to be 4 or 5 guys drafted from that game this year. And I had as many guys. And Kent's pitcher, Zach Wildman, who I've talked about many a time, pitched a strong game, and he's one of the players there. And I've seen multiple scouts out to see Dylan Rosa. We've had a little bit of talk on Luke Birch, who's a favorite senior of mine, center fielder for Akron, who, if you go on Baseball Cube, look up the numbers, it's just he hits for average. There's some power. Someone near me during the game had him at a 4.01 down the line, which is 65, 70 grade speed. Can play center, plays right for them right now. And his, I've talked about the importance of when you look at advanced statistics, sometimes a BABIP showing being a good thing in the low minors, and his BABIPs have been almost like 450, 480. He's a really intriguing player from that perspective. Well, I thought last year when I watched them, I thought he was their second best bat, and he didn't get drafted as a junior. So, just someone fun to watch. I can say, though, at that game with all the scouts there, they were also really active in watching Toledo starter Ross Acher, who's a fifth-year senior, left-hander, 6'4". I had him up to 89. Real good command control guy around the zone. Big lefty, command control. He's going to be a guy you can maybe sign on the cheap because he'll be 23 in May. He's going to be 6 years older than someone like Mark Vientos on the day of the draft. But, the scouts were paying attention. They're a very talkative group amongst themselves. You could pick things up, but they were there watching him. And there's one more guy that I like to bring up. The interesting story is Jalen Washington, the shortstop at Ohio State. Last year, he was a catcher and led the Big Ten in runners thrown out. He was a shortstop in high school. Ohio State's program got decimated by the draft last year. It's not been a strong year for the Ohio State baseball program, to put it nicely. And Jalen Washington took one for the team and moved from catcher back to shortstop. He's in the top 10 in the country and being hit by pitches. With, again, that same friend, I should say who it is, Burt Granger. We had a good talk at one game. Told me how he had talked to a scout who had mentioned, we're at least looking or considering him in the late round because how many guys can play shortstop and catcher, just a nice thing to have on the bench in the minors. So the question is, can he really play short? But those are kind of the guys I've seen this year, some of the fun, interesting seniors.
There's 2 guys that came to my mind. Tim Richards, kind of a smaller infielder of sorts, 6-foot infielder. out of Cal State Fullerton, just turned 22. So he's a little bit younger on the senior side. He was an 18th rounder last year. Hit 9 home runs for Fullerton last year, but the bat's just not really all that much there. The other guy, Jared Poche, he was drafted in the 14th round.
Oh, yeah.
Last year with Diego. Started the year on did he have a no-hitter on opening weekend, something like that? He's down at LSU. Sinker ball guy. He gives up a few home runs here or there, but really something else. I like him a lot. These are guys that are going to go on the second day, possibly near the end of the second day, 7 to 10 round range. But guys that are just at least going to play pro ball, that are really having fun. I think it's great. Jeff, I don't know if you have any other guys you'd love to note on. Anybody that's really kind of picked your brain that you've seen and you say, hey, yeah, I like this kid.
Like I said, I mentioned this Birch, and I keep meaning to write the article just because, and the numbers, he started out at Ashland, transferred to Kent, and was kind of immediately given a starting job. It's just he's one of those guys where I look at, like I said, again, numbers, blazing speed down the line. I decided to pull him up. Yeah, his 370 hitter in college. His BABIP is 444. An ISO this year at 159. Not a huge amount of power, but always get on base, can play multiple outfield spots. The strikeouts have been a little bit higher for a guy without power, but he's one of those guys I watch and I'm intrigued by. A guy I've been following lately is I always say this wrong. It's Jake Adams. I want to say Jack Adams, which is the hockey trophy. But Jake Adams is a first baseman at Iowa that you probably don't know. And he came from the community college ranks last year without a lot of fanfare. And Iowa is not a massive baseball program, but he stepped in his first year in Division I, and he's only hitting 344 with 15 home runs and 11 doubles. He's just, one of the top power bats this year in college baseball, and just kind of an unknown. If you even go and you look on something like Baseball Cube, which is a fantastic reference, I would highly recommend supporting them and giving them money, because there's no better place to get college baseball stats. But, you look at his biography, it has his university, and that's it. There's nothing else. So he's one of those guys who's I like to kind of chase numbers occasionally and just see, like, who is this guy? It's the same thing with at Louisiana Lafayette. There's a pitcher who has started the last 2 years, and it wasn't great there. He was a 2-pitch guy, kind of on the radar. They moved him into the pen this year, but he's not a traditional pen role. He's like a 2-inning pitcher out of the pen, and he leads the nation in strikeouts per 9. It's Wyatt something or other. I'm sorry, Wyatt. I'm being bad. This is top of my head. And, I kind of went and tracked it down. I'm like, we've got 2 legit pitches. There's some stuff here. I'm not big in general on the idea of drafting a reliever, but if you're going to get someone in round 2 or 3, I love the performance, and the fact is that he's already being trained to be a multi-inning reliever. So I'm almost to his name, Wyatt Marks. Let's see, he has 79 strikeouts in 47 innings.
Man, that's something else. I mean, I'm more Jeff and I are a little bit different on the scouting scale a little bit. And it's funny, I do a little bit more traditional. I like the guys that are a little more traditional, but when it comes to if I was drafting, I'd be a little more conservative, and Jeff is a little bit more by the numbers. And at the same time, he's a little bit more about the upside, so it's very intriguing how the two of us go together. A kid that I really like is Connor Uselton, Oklahoma outfielder in the high school rank. Played quarterback for his high school, and he's got tools across the board. Scouts are giving him a 6th tool in almost every category. It's just the bat that's the concern, which is a big concern to have. Also, just only turned 18 just a few days ago, if I believe right. Great kid. Jeff, I think we're closing out. I think it was a great podcast. We hope you guys really enjoyed tuning in today. Jeff, any closing words? What are you working on coming up here, and what can we expect from you? And it's going to be a busy one.
We're going to try to do more of these, maybe keep them shorter at 30 minutes. Again, you can now go on iTunes, subscribe, and rate. Ratings are very helpful from what I understand. The more we can get our stuff up, the more opportunities we'll get to do things. I'm just right now just so focused on going to games. I will have that report up from Akron. Report is literally sitting there on the website waiting for me to publish, so it may not come up till Monday. The videos are in Box Spring, so they'll be up soon as well. I'm gonna I want to kind of do a jump in piece and talk about some of these under the radar guys like Adams. Mock and big boards are coming, and this weekend I'm going to see Central Michigan. Daniel Gipling is an outfielder to watch, and all three of their starters are guys I've kind of been following. So it'll be good to see CMU. I'll see Miami the week after that. I'll get a chance to see Youngstown again with Andrew Kendricks, another one of the big surprise bats this year. A kid who came out of nowhere and is one of the top home run hitters in the country. Going to be seeing what I can see as often as I can as we kind of get to the end of this year. And I feel like right now it's very unsettled. It just more than years past. There's a lot of talent. I'm not saying it's a bad draft, but I feel it's going to be interesting to see how this all starts to crystallize.
I agree. Jeff, it's been a pleasure, and I can't wait for this next month. Jeff and I talk every single day when it comes to May and June, so it's going to be really exciting. Jeff, you remember the MySpace days where you had a top 8?
I do, yes. Yeah, I've been tempted to go see if mine still exists.
You'd be jumping into my number 2 right behind my fiance, man. So
yeah, you'd be there after my wife. So it'd be
thanks, man. Hey, there we go. It's been great, guys. We really thank you for tuning in. Obviously, I'll be working on that California prep piece, going and getting my final notes. I know that I'll be heading down to Fullerton here, checking out Keston Hira of UC Irvine, taking on Connor Siebold over at Cal State Fullerton. I do know that there is going to be a few cross-checkers and a Major League general manager there. I won't give away who it is, but they'll be there. I'll be there. We're going to have a lot of fun over the next month. It's been a pleasure having you guys with us. Can't wait to see you, talk to you. Send us your questions on Twitter at Taylor Blake Ward or at Jeff MLB Draft. Obviously, we're going to play out with a little country music, kind of what we went in with. Guys, it's been great. Check us out on iTunes at scoutingbaseball.com. We'll talk to you soon.